Hello, welcome to our presentation on adjectives and nouns. These are two fundamental building blocks of language, and understanding how they work together is essential for clear and effective communication. Think of nouns as the main actors on a stage. They represent people, places, things, or ideas. Adjectives, on the other hand, are like the costumes and makeup. They add details and descriptions to the nouns, making them more interesting and vivid. In this presentation, we'll explore this fascinating relationship between adjectives and nouns and how they work together to create meaningful sentences. We'll be looking at a couple of examples to help you better understand this important concept. Let's begin. All right, so we just learned about adjectives and nouns. Now let's put our knowledge to the test with a little puzzle. Take a look at the sentence on the slide. I like walking in freshly fallen snow. Hearing the crisp beneath my feet is magnificent. Something isn't quite right, is it? It sounds a bit off. Take a moment to see if you can spot what's making the sentence sound odd. What word seems out of place? Yes, the word crisp. We'll talk about why it seems strange on the next slide, but there's a clue in the picture. We just saw a sentence with a slightly tricky word, crisp. Look at the picture on the slide. See how confusing it might be? That's how your reader might feel. The sentence uses crisp as a noun, like it's a thing, but crisp is actually an adjective in this sentence, a word that describes a thing. It's like saying, I felt the soft, or I tasted the sour. Soft what? Sour what? It doesn't give us a clear picture. In the next slide, we'll explore what adjectives are and how they work. So let's move on. We just saw how a word like crisp can cause confusion. Now let's dive into what adjectives really are and how they work with nouns. Think of adjectives as descriptive buddies for nouns. They tell us more about the noun, making our sentences more interesting and clear. Remember, nouns are words for people, places, things, or even sensations or ideas. Look at the examples on the slide. We have the word crisp, which is our adjective, and we're using it to describe different nouns: sound, air, and apple. A crisp sound is different from a muffled sound, right? Crisp air gives us a different feeling than humid air. And a crisp apple makes us think of a juicy, firm apple, not a mushy one. See how the adjective crisp paints a clearer picture in our minds. It adds detail and helps us understand exactly what's being described. The image on the slide helps us visualize these differences too. Next, we'll see why it's so important for adjectives to stick with their noun buddies. Let's look at why we need to pair adjectives with nouns. Remember, an adjective like crisp needs a noun to really make sense. Think of it like a puzzle piece. It needs another piece to complete the picture. Crisp by itself is just a piece of the puzzle. What is crisp? Crisp air, a crisp apple, a crisp sound. Look at the image on the slide. We see a crisp apple and a crisp sound wave. Crisp needs a noun, that other puzzle piece, to tell us what is crisp. If I just say crisp, you're left wondering, crisp what? It's like a sentence without a subject. So always remember to pair your adjectives with the nouns they describe to make your writing clear and strong. Now let's see how this applies to our original sentence. Now the corrected sentence says, hearing the crisp sound beneath my feet. See how much clearer that is? By adding the noun sound, we now understand exactly what is crisp, the sound of the snow. It completes the picture and makes the sensory experience much more vivid. We can practically hear the crunch now. We'll move on to talk about some exceptions to this rule next. Let's take another example. We just talked about how crisp needs a noun to go with it, like crisp sound. Now let's think about the word flute. Imagine you're at a concert and you hear this beautiful melody. You see the musician on the stage. What instrument are they playing? A flute, right? The word flute already tells us it makes a sound. We don't need to say flute sound. Look at the picture on the slide. The flute player is making music with their flute. We understand that a flute produces sound inherently, just like we know a dog is an animal. You wouldn't say a dog animal, would you? Sounds a little funny, doesn't it? So while saying flute sound isn't exactly wrong, it's just not the best way to say it. It's kind of like adding extra puzzle pieces that don't really fit. Flute by itself is perfectly clear and strong. Next, we'll talk more about this idea of using too many words, which we call redundancy. Let's talk about redundancy in language. We've been discussing how important it is to choose the right words to express ourselves clearly. Sometimes we use extra words that don't add any new meaning, and that's what we call redundancy. Think about the phrase dog animal. We know a dog is an animal, right? So saying dog animal is like saying the same thing twice. The word animal is redundant because it doesn't give us any extra information. It's like saying round circle or wet water. Can a circle be anything other than round? Can water be anything other than wet in its natural state? These extra words clutter our language and make it less impactful. By avoiding redundancy, we can make our writing and speaking much clearer and more concise. Next, we'll look at how the word crisp can be used effectively without being redundant. We've seen how the word crisp works as an adjective, but it's actually quite versatile. It can be a noun too. Think about the word crisp as an adjective. We use it to describe things like crisp air, a crisp apple, or a crisp sound. Now think about how you might use crisp as a noun. In British English, you might talk about potato crisps, which are what Americans call potato chips. Or someone might say, I ate a crisp, referring to a single potato crisp. The important thing to remember is that the context of the sentence tells us whether crisp is being used as an adjective or a noun. The crisp air invigorated me uses crisp as an adjective, but I enjoyed a crisp with my lunch uses crisp as a noun, so the meaning changes depending on how it's used. Keep this in mind as we move on to look at the final corrected sentence. Let's recap what we've learned about adjectives and nouns and how they work together. Remember our original sentence? It felt a little off, right? Now take a look at this improved version. I like walking in freshly fallen snow. Hearing the crisp sound beneath my feet is magnificent. Much better. We added the word sound after the adjective crisp, and now we know what is crisp. It's the sound, not the feet themselves, and not a crisp. This makes the image much more vivid. Can you almost hear that crunch? Before the sentence left us guessing, but now it's clear and engaging. We've learned about avoiding redundancy and choosing the right words to create a powerful impact. And this sentence is a perfect example. So why is understanding adjectives and nouns so important in real-world situations? It's not just about grammar rules, it's about communicating effectively. Think about your writing. Using descriptive language and choosing the right words makes your writing more vivid and engaging. Being precise helps your readers understand exactly what you mean. For example, instead of saying the car was moving fast, you could say the sleek red sports car zipped down the highway. See how much more interesting that is? The proper use of adjectives and nouns adds clarity and paints a clearer picture for your reader. This also applies to speaking. When you use adjectives and nouns correctly, You express yourself more clearly, and there's less room for misunderstanding. People will grasp your meaning more easily, leading to better communication overall. Imagine trying to give someone directions and saying, "Turn at the big thing." That's confusing. But if you say, "Turn at the tall brick building," they'll know exactly where to go. And finally, understanding how adjectives and nouns work together improves your comprehension. When you read or listen to others, you'll be able to understand the nuances of their language and appreciate the richness of their descriptions. Next, we'll wrap up with a recap of the key takeaways from today's presentation. Let's recap what we learnt today about adjectives and nouns. Remember, adjectives are words that describe nouns. Think of them as descriptive buddies. And nouns, those are the words that represent people, places, things, ideas. So, an adjective always needs a noun to describe. We talked about how crisp needs a noun to go with it, like crisp sound or crisp air. We also learned about avoiding redundancy, meaning using extra words that aren't needed, like saying round circle. It's redundant because circle already tells us it's round. So keep those key points in mind. We've covered a lot about adjectives and nouns today. Now is your chance to ask any questions you might have. Anything that's still a little fuzzy or something that you'd like to explore further. Now is the time. Do you have any lingering questions about how adjectives describe nouns or how nouns function in sentences? Maybe something about how we corrected that sentence about the snow earlier. Don't hesitate to ask, even if it seems small. Let's make sure everyone is feeling confident about these concepts before we move on to the additional resources. You can ask questions on our Discord server or on our Discuss page. As we wrap up this presentation on adjectives and nouns, I want to equip you with some additional resources to further enhance your understanding. On the Learn English Network, you will find a collection of helpful materials for continued learning. Grammar exercises specifically designed to strengthen your grasp of adjectives and noun pairings, as well as vocabulary building activities focused on descriptive language. For those interested in improving their overall writing and speaking skills, we've included style guides and resources. We also have links to interactive online platforms where you can practice your grammar skills in a more engaging way. If you're eager to delve deeper, we've listed recommended readings on language and communication skills, along with writing prompts and exercises to help you apply the concepts we've covered today. Finally, there are resources for exploring the more nuanced aspects of adjective uses. These resources will be invaluable as you continue to refine your language skills. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Till next time, bye.